All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and that was a lot to process. Today we're going to be talking about episode 4 of the Ahsoka series titled Fallen Jedi. Can't believe we're already at the midpoint of the series, and you can tell that things have just kicked up to 1,000 because this was easily the best episode of the season so far. And I think this caliber of episode was what people have been waiting for all season. I've been enjoying the ride so far, but I know people have been critical that the show hasn't been moving fast enough or not enough big things have been happening. But if that's what you've been waiting for, you definitely got that and some more with this episode. We have Ray Stevenson as Baylon Skoll, completely stealing the show for this episode. I'm so happy he finally took center stage and we got to see so much more of his character. Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. This is a fantastic role that he has embodied this dark Jedi to the highest degree. I love what he's bringing to the role, but I love how he's also pulling in all these different pieces of other Sith Lords and Dark Jedi that we've seen throughout the history of Star Wars canon. Can't wait to dive more into that in this episode. The lightsaber battles were on a whole other level in this episode compared to earlier ones that we saw this season. They were well-paced, they were emotional, they were tense. The music was very samurai influenced, and we also saw some choreography that was also mimicking samurai-like movements, which was so cool to see. We continue to explore this Ahsoka and Sabine relationship, and we get some huge hints here on what might have happened in their past that has led to such a tenuous relationship, and maybe the main reason that they split up in the first place. Sabine makes a very dark side-esque decision that's going to have some repercussions that are going to drive this series forward. We finally make our way to Thrawn. Can't wait to hopefully see him next week. And yeah, I think that was the only important stuff that happened this episode. There definitely wasn't a whole ending sequence where Hayden Christensan came back as Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka is in the middle of the world between worlds and she might actually be dead and this is all a vision in her head as she dies. And she might have just become one with the Force. I don't know. I don't think anything like that must have happened in this episode. Yeah, that ending was something. And I already cannot wait for 9 o'clock next week. It was a classic Dave Filoni cliffhanger. And boy, oh boy, are the theories flying. I've been so excited to jump into this episode and talk to you guys. I was waiting all day at work. I've been talking to some of my friends, some of the podcast listeners about what they thought of the episode. And the theories are flying, and I'm so excited to dive right into this with you guys. I think I, of course, want to start with the late, great Ray Stevenson and his portrayal of Baylon Skoll in this episode. Because up until this episode, we had not been given a lot to work with Baylon as a character. He's always been this ever-present, intimidating, shadow-like figure. We got some hints into his motivations, but here it was put on full display how he has survived this long after Order 66. Ray brings so much to this role, not just in the physically imposing presence that he is, but in the cadence in which he speaks, in the calmness of his demeanor during battle, and even moments where he's manipulating Sabine or trying to break down Ahsoka by bringing up her past. All of it comes together to create this extremely intimidating image of a dark Jedi who has an honor code, but he's also very smart. He knows his enemies. He knows Ahsoka's past. He knows Anakin became Darth Vader. He knows about Ezra and Sabine's weaknesses. And he uses all of that to his advantage and eventually win in this very pivotal moment, taking down Ahsoka and then successfully manipulating Sabine to give him the map. And then you pair all of that with how intense he is in this lightsaber battle where all of his swings feel like they have so much weight behind them. Ahsoka gets knocked back easily. She actually has to change her lightsaber stance and only use one blade because she knows if she uses two blades, he'll knock them right out of her hand with one swing. And again, I love how much they size each other up at the beginning of this battle, and they both are so experienced, and you can tell that without any words being said. And they change stances. They go from defensive to offensive, really feeling out their opponent, very samurai-esque. And this fight from the trailer definitely lived up to the hype. But I do want to dive into Baylon here because, like I said, we get a little bit more information into what his grand plan is. We don't get a lot. He's still very vague about what his overall goal is, but I've kind of had this prediction throughout the series that he's been trying to find a way to restart the Jedi Order and that he is the only one that could successfully do it. You see with Shin, she still has a Padawan braid, but I don't think that's from the Jedi Order because I don't think she was around when Order 66 happened. I'm not sure she's old enough to have been there. So that might be something that Baylon has implemented and made her have a Padawan braid because he's seeing her not as a Sith apprentice, but as a Jedi apprentice. We see that he has this affinity for the Jedi Order and still looks on it very fondly. And when Ahsoka says Thrawn is going to start another war, Baylon counters and says, sometimes you need to destroy to create. And for me, that reads as him saying that he wants to create a problem and then become the solution. The galaxy will need the Jedi Order again, but I think his pride makes him feel that he is the only one that could truly bring it back and do it the right way, because it seems like he has a disdain for the old Jedi Order in how the masters trained their apprentices. We see here that he gets physically angry when talking about how Ahsoka failed Sabine during their lightsaber fight. And then he also says that Anakin is a failure. He's angry that Anakin fell and became Darth Vader. He's angry that Ahsoka failed her student. And we see he does have this respect for Shin. Maybe he even had a negative experience with his master, and that's why he has this very passionate feeling towards the master-apprentice relationship. And I think he's trying to build this order on a shared respect of master and apprentice. And I think there's a lot of ego that comes with that, and that's really the dark side of the Force, and that's why he has fallen, because he thinks he truly is the only savior that can do it. At least that's my prediction based on what we have to work off of. And I think that's a really interesting premise, and I'm curious if Dave starts to go down that route. While on the subject of Baylon, I do want to talk about the title of the episode, because I love when a title has multiple meanings and can relate to multiple different characters. I know you guys heard that when I talked about Andor and some of the titles that we got during that series, but I think this title, Fallen Jedi, is meant to imply that it's talking about Baylon. But of course, we see throughout this episode that this could also be implied to be about Sabine and Ahsoka and their decisions and what happens to them in this episode. So I always appreciate a title that can do that. And I think this segues perfectly into Ahsoka and Sabine and their relationship in this episode, because I think we get a lot of important nuggets of information here about what might have happened between Ahsoka and Sabine that has led to them have such a tenuous relationship and probably caused them to split up in the first place. In my favorite scene of the episode, where Baylon and Sabine are facing each other and Sabine is about to shoot the map, with tears in her eyes as Baylon calms down, he closes his eyes, deactivates his lightsaber, and puts on a very dignified, calm, and compassionate face for Sabine to get what he wants. A very Sith-like quality, but we know by the end of this conversation, he does uphold what he did promise. And he says that she's conflicted because she feels that Ezra is the last piece of her family that she has left. And we know she had a tenuous relationship with her family as a youth. She joined the Imperial Academy and created weapons for the Empire, and those weapons eventually were used against the Mandalorian people, and she became an outcast and was shunned by her family and the rest of Mandalore. But then by the end of Rebels, we have this great reconciliation between her and her family and the people of Mandalore, and she's seen as this grand unifier and this savior for them when the Empire has essentially taken over their world. And it's a really beautiful journey she goes on with the trials of the Darksaber and then returning to Mandalore to save her people and destroy the weapon that she helped create. So we know that she was on good terms with her family and that her family was alive and well the last time we saw them. Of course, we know because of Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett that there was the Night of 1,000 Tears when the Empire completely shelled the entire planet of Mandalore, and all of the Mandalorians on the planet who weren't able to escape were killed, which might imply that Sabine might have been able to help them or might have been able to assist in the fight against the Empire or stop this bombing run from happening. And Ahsoka seems to be the one that got in the way of that for whatever reason. Again, we don't have the context of how Ahsoka and Sabine came together as master and apprentice when Sabine approached her to become her Padawan or vice versa with Ahsoka coming to her. So we don't have a full picture of that timeline, but here we get this confirmation that Sabine might blame Ahsoka for her family's death, which is huge and definitely feeds into why Ahsoka might feel standoffish in this series, because she feels that she wronged Sabine in a way that cannot be reconciled. So I think this line is probably the most important line we've got in the series so far, and really paves the way for what the rest of the story will explore between Sabine and Ahsoka, them both coming to terms with what happened with Sabine's family. And again, I'm speaking about Sabine a lot. I absolutely loved Natasha's portrayal of Sabine in this episode. I like the foreshadowing in the beginning when Ahsoka's like, Sabine, can I trust you? Because she knows that she has these feelings for Ezra that might compromise their mission. If they can't get to Thrawn, that means no one else can, and that's a good thing. So unfortunately, Ezra might also be there and he might be lost, but we have to put the greater good of the galaxy over our personal feelings. Again, we've heard similar lines like that before in Star Wars, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they do not. But I love that by the end this comes around and Sabine makes maybe the wrong decision here. She gives up the map. She has the tears in her eyes. I love when she pulls the map closer to herself as she has the blaster pointed to it, and we get this moment where it's just Baylon's hand reaching out. We don't see the rest of him. We just see this dark hand reach out, almost representing the dark side reaching out to her. And we get this silence, and then the music kind of shifts right when the map lands in Baylon's hand. I love the sound design here. And with another Sith Lord, maybe she would have been killed. But Baylon is a man of his word. He has the honor code, and he tells Shin, do not kill her. I made a promise I'm not going to let her down like her master did. Again, giving us that hint that Ahsoka failed her on a bigger scale than what we've been led to believe so far. And I'm so excited to see where this story goes, with Sabine being in the lion's den and living with her decision. And I think big decisions like this and facing yourself are the only way for someone to truly advance as a Jedi. This is almost a trial for her. And I think the opportunity for more interactions between Sabine and Shin, who have had this rivalry throughout the first 4 episodes of the show, I think is really going to be awesome to explore. I think we're going to see that they have a lot more in common than what they might both realize. And of course, I just want more Shin. Speaking of Shin, I thought the lightsaber battle between Sabine and Shin in the forest was pretty cool. I like how Shin was smart and she drew Sabine away from Ahsoka, knowing that that would make her weaker and make her more impulsive and make her rely less on Ahsoka, because Hugh Yang says before they leave, please rely on each other, please stick together, and Shin knows that. And the really interesting piece of this battle is we do see that Sabine does use the Force. I mean, it is a small push, but it is the Force, and I know some people will probably have an issue with that. I do personally wish there was a bit more buildup of Sabine spiritually to be able to wield the Force, even in this small respect. But again, I think we've seen throughout Star Wars that traumatic, intense moments flare up these emotions and almost unlock the Force for some people. I mean, we see in the original trilogy, Luke doesn't use the Force until he's about to get killed by the Wampa in the middle of Hoth, and he pulls the lightsaber to him. That's at least the first time we see him use the Force. Before that, we didn't really see him use the Force at all. So again, I can believe Dave Filoni here that in a moment of heightened emotions that the Force may be able to manifest, and that's why it was such a small amount of the Force. Maybe not enough to pull a lightsaber like Luke did, but it was something. And I like that Sabine lost again. It would have been bad if she got beaten and then she only trained a little on the ship and then was able to actually beat Shin, but she relied on her Mandalorian gadgets and her Mandalorian roots, which was cool to see. And yeah, will Sabine be trained by Ezra when she finally meets him? Will she be able to train on her own in this ship by herself? She'll be able to meditate. Will she be able to commune with Ahsoka? Because I'm about to get into the whole Ahsoka situation, because I have so many thoughts on where that might go. But before I move on to Ahsoka, I do want to just highlight a really cool piece of the Baylon and Sabine interaction, because Ray Stevenson played Gar Saxon in Clone Wars and Rebels. And in Rebels, Gar Saxon is like the leader of the Mandalorian Imperial Police Force on Mandalore, and Sabine has to face off against Gar Saxon at one point at her like family estate. So Ray Stevenson has now faced off against Sabine as 2 different characters in animation and in live action now. I just thought that was really cool. So I think it's finally time we talk about that ending where Ahsoka is off balance because she sees that Sabine is in danger and Baylon is able to push her off the edge of a cliff and we don't see what happens to her. I really loved the expression of emotion from both Sabine and Ahsoka when this happens. So we get this great transition shot of the camera panning over the ocean and we see the white caps of the waves hitting against the cliff, and it perfectly transitions right into the world between worlds where Ahsoka's arm looks like it's creating waves. And so, yeah, we see the world between worlds in live action for the first time. If that's what this is, I'm going to do a quick crash course for what the world between worlds is. If you haven't seen Rebels, you would have no idea what is going on here and the implication of the world between worlds. In the simplest terms, it is the physical representation of the Force and the connections that it has across time and space. So we know throughout Star Wars that every living being is connected through the Force. The Force is in everything, and the Force is also always in motion in the future and in the past. We see Jedi have the ability to sense what happened in an area from the past, and you also have Jedi who have visions of the future. Even though the future is always in motion, they have these glimpses into what may occur, and the Force allows them to do that. So the world between worlds is really playing off those theories that everything is happening all at once and that the Force is connecting everything. Every moment is connected. And in Rebels, we see these windows into different events in people's lives. Specifically, it was Ezra. And he was able to physically change the past by pulling Ahsoka into the world between worlds when he sees her through one of these windows. This saves her life from getting killed by Darth Vader, and she returns to that same window so that there isn't this crazy multiversal timeline kind of thing that would kind of dilute Star Wars, I think. So Dave Filoni was very careful when he used the world between worlds. I think he's hopefully going to use that same caution in this series as well. The world between worlds is not just a powerful location for Jedi, it's also powerful for the Sith. We see that Palpatine is very interested in the world between worlds because he knows that if he has the power to manipulate time and space through the world between worlds, he would be the most powerful being ever, and his reign would never end. And we see that Ahsoka and Ezra are able to stop him from grasping this power. The big question for Rebels fans and non-Rebels fans going into this series with Ahsoka and with the world between worlds is that we don't have a lot of context of where the world between worlds is. Ezra is able to access it through a Jedi temple that the Imperials were also interested in. But once that temple was destroyed, we weren't sure if that was the only way you could access the world between worlds or if there was other locations that you could do it from. So that's a big question here. We don't know how people get to the world between worlds outside of what we've seen in Rebels. So again, we don't know if this is the world between worlds. We don't know if this is just Ahsoka's vision, but if it is, hopefully this little crash course helped you and can give you some context if Dave doesn't give you too much next week. So back to the regularly scheduled programming. So it seems Ahsoka's in the world between worlds, and we hear a very muffled and familiar, "Hey Snips, I wasn't expecting you so soon." Now these two lines, these are huge. These carry a lot of weight because, of course, Anakin's there, and I'm very surprised that they went with this as the opening line for Anakin. Because when we last see them in Clone Wars, Anakin doesn't call her Snips when they say goodbye to each other for the last time. And then, when they face off as Ahsoka and Darth Vader, he definitely does not call her Snips. So this is a very interesting line to kick it off with. I'm sure there's some meaning behind this, whether it's Anakin has found peace and he's okay with expressing himself like that, or if there's some more nefarious things going on, because we do hear the Darth Vader theme at the end of this episode as it cuts to black. It's very faint, but it is there. So it does leave some doubt if this is a good thing that she's seeing Anakin again. Now, when he says, "I didn't expect you here so soon," that really makes me think that she's dead. Almost like Anakin's like, "She should have lived longer. Why are you one with the Force now? I expected you to live a longer life." Do I think Ahsoka's dead? No, of course not. That would have been a terrible thing to name the series Ahsoka, and then she's just a Force ghost for the rest of the series. It would be a very interesting move if she becomes one with the Force and then is able to just commune with Sabine and that's how Sabine completes her training. Maybe. I really hope she wasn't saved by the world between worlds again, because Ezra already did that for her in Rebels, and I would hate to see Ahsoka get Deus Ex Machina'd again and get saved by this supernatural physical manifestation of the Force. But the world between worlds opens up a lot of possibilities for this series. Is that how Ahsoka is going to get to Sabine across the galaxy? Is Ahsoka going to go back to when she failed Sabine when they were training, and that's how they'll reconcile, and that's how she'll face her past, and Anakin will kind of guide her through this spiritual journey of her accepting the guilt that she's had, whether it was leaving him in the Jedi Order and then failing Sabine as a teacher? Maybe. This is such a crazy cliffhanger here. And while I'd love to be excited that this is Hayden Christensan as Anakin, I still don't fully believe that it's Anakin. It just doesn't feel like that's what he would have opened with, and it doesn't feel like they would use the Darth Vader music if this was some happy reunion between them. And I think Rosario does a great job in this scene of not only displaying happiness for seeing her master in his old way, even though the last time she saw him was as Darth Vader, but also shock and confusion as to what the hell is going on and why she's back in the world between worlds. I think it's more likely that this is a manifestation of her being unconscious, and Anakin would be the one to come to her in those visions, and the world between worlds is such a huge part of how she's still alive today, and that's such a physical manifestation of the Force that it would make sense that that would be the plane of existence that she would meditate to. We know that Hera is in the atmosphere and would come down to check, so I assume next episode Hera will make a trip down and scan for life forms and hopefully find Ahsoka. This is a very ancient structure, so there might be some sort of Jedi artifact below this temple that they fought in. Maybe that's where she fell to. I think that would be very weird if she had this like perfect fall into a temple or whatever. So I really don't know what to do about this. Of course, it was fantastic to see Hayden Christensan look like the Clone Wars Anakin more than the Revenge of the Sith Anakin. So that was really, really cool. I, of course, love seeing him, but I just can't celebrate it because I don't fully believe that it's him. I haven't been on Twitter too much. I know there's some theories rolling around. I was talking to some of my friends about this being the brother from Mortis, and that since she is the living life force of the sister from Mortis, that's how the brother is now communicating with her because she is on this near-death-like bed. I don't know. It's very, very interesting. We know Sam Witwer is part of the project. He voiced the son in the Mortis arc, so it would make sense if he voices him again or even plays him in live action here. So many theories. We only have to wait another 5 days for by the time this comes out. There's a huge mid-season event that they're doing. They're putting the 5th episode in movie theaters in like 10 or 12 movie theaters across the country in like New York, Chicago, all the big cities. And we know Dave Filoni is directing next week, so we know that he would be the only one that would be able to take on something like having Anakin and Ahsoka interact for a long period of time. And we know that we're definitely going to be seeing Thrawn next week, right? We have to see Thrawn next week, and that's what everyone's been waiting for. He has to be a menace from the second he steps on the screen. He has to prove to people that don't know who he is that he is meant to be feared and that the hype around him is well-deserved. I personally hope that he finds Morgan Elsbeth to be some sort of strategic liability and just takes her out or takes away her position. Like, I really just need him to insert himself into the power dynamic and immediately make everyone else stand at attention. And I think him doing that to Morgan would just be the best, and I think it would really set the stage for who he is. And hopefully they give him a lot of wins. Hopefully they show his strategic intellect and a little bit of his art culture piece, which is really the most iconic part about him. So yeah, those are all my thoughts. There was a lot to process this week. I want to hear all of your guys' theories about what is going on at the end of this episode, where you think the rest of the series is going. Let me know on Instagram at @star_wars_mark of balance. Is Ahsoka dead? Is this really the world between worlds? Is that really Anakin? How is Sabine going to work her way out of this? Is she going to find Ezra? Is Thrawn coming next week? What is Baylon's plan? How is Shin working into all of this? Is Hera going to make the trip out there? Are we going to see Zeb? So many great questions. But again, as always, in Filoni we trust. From the first week of this show, I knew that this show would be more cohesive as a completed project and less on a week-to-week basis, because Filoni is introducing all of these questions and allowing fans to have theories. And I think when it's all said and done, it's going to be an 8-episode long Star Wars movie with a very cohesive story and a very well planned out through line into what he wanted to add to the Star Wars galaxy. So again, thank you guys for listening. If you could leave a rating on whatever podcast streaming service you're listening to, would really appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell your family, whoever enjoys Star Wars that you know. Let them know about the podcast. I'm sure they'll find something they like out of all the episodes that I've done. Thank you for the continued support. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.